a quiet morning, and then complete silence. On May 2nd, 2025, 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan vanished without a trace from their rural home in Nova Scotia. No screams, no signs of a struggle, just a door left ajar, a mystery that would leave an entire town searching and wondering. Hundreds of volunteers scoured miles of thick forest, but there was no trace, no footprints, nothing. Was it a simple accident, or is something far darker lurking in the shadows? The police are at a standstill. Theories spread like wildfire. Did the children wander off, or was something far more sinister at play? As the days go on, secrets begin to surface.
They walked out of sight, and a quiet Nova Scotia road turned into the hardest kind of question. Where did they go? Hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you'll get first-hand updates as investigators follow leads, labs finish tests, and the community keeps searching for answers. On the morning of May 2nd, 2025, a missing persons call shattered the ordinary calm of Gairloch Road in Lansdowne Station, Pictou County. 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan were reported gone from the yard where they had been playing. From that small, precise moment, the time the call was placed, the place the family called home, investigators, volunteers, and neighbors set to work. What followed was one of the largest and most thorough local search efforts in recent memory. Drones swept forest canopies, human remains detection teams and tracking dogs combed dense brush, and roughly 150 trained searchers established grid lines across pipelines, wetlands, and wooded slopes. 4 days the landscape echoed with coordinated calls and the low hum of helicopters as people tried to bring 2 children home. Even with that scale of effort, the search produced frustratingly little to confirm a clear path or outcome. Within 5 days, authorities recalibrated. On May 7th, RCMP scaled back the broad, public ground searches and shifted into a different phase of inquiry that emphasized forensic analysis, digital reconstruction, and follow-up interviews. That isn't a retreat so much as an evolution. Emergency sweeps are designed to cover wide ground quickly when the odds of rescue are highest. Once that immediate period passes, investigators typically focus on technical leads that require more time and controlled conditions. In this case, that meant collecting and cataloging thousands of hours of video, gathering tips, and pursuing targeted warrants and lab work. The objective remained the same: find Lily and Jack, alive if possible, or at least determine with certainty what happened that day. What makes this case particularly painful is the mix of intense public effort and persistent uncertainty. Authorities received more than 180 public tips that came from neighbors, drivers, people who had been in the area, and users who reviewed surveillance footage at home. Each tip demanded review. Every tip required logging, verification, and cross-checking. Few of them produced immediately actionable evidence. That does not mean the tips were useless. Investigators say many contained peripheral details that helped shape search priorities or suggested new cameras and witnesses to pursue. But months on, none of the public leads have confirmed an abduction or yielded definitive evidence of what became of the 2 children. Investigators have also noted inconsistencies in family timelines, a fact that is important to how police piece events together. In many missing person investigations, especially under emotional pressure, recollections of time and sequence can differ across household members. Memory is fallible by nature, and when several adults and multiple children are trying to reconstruct a short span under stress, their accounts can diverge. That is precisely the challenge detectives face: distinguishing honest, confused memory from material discrepancies that may point to overlooked movement or to other, more consequential facts. RCMP have recorded those timing inconsistencies and continue to reconcile them against objective anchors, surveillance footage, timestamp transactions, and any device metadata recovered through lawful process. One crucial anchor in the timeline did emerge: surveillance footage placing the family at a Dollarama store in New Glasgow the afternoon before their disappearance. That recording provides a fixed, verifiable timestamp that detectives can use to map travel routes, likely windows of presence at home, and potential opportunities for interaction with other people or vehicles. It's the kind of concrete evidence investigators favor because it gives them a frame into which other fragments can be fitted. From that point, they seek to overlay phone tower pings, vehicle plate reads, and neighbors' accounts to try to construct the last hours with forensic certainty. Community people did not walk away. Volunteers kept organizing local searches and held vigils, and the community's attention never dimmed. Vigils and local search efforts serve multiple purposes. They sustain public engagement, they keep the case in the news cycle, and they sometimes surface fresh eyewitnesses or old footage that only later is recognized as relevant. Local groups and family members continued to canvass privately accessible areas, to revisit ponds and drainage ditches, and to coordinate with police where possible. That persistence is both practical and human. When the official search shifts focus, families and neighbors still want to act, to do something rather than wait. Those efforts must be coordinated with police to avoid contaminating potential evidence, and organizers have tried to work in step with investigators to maximize usefulness and minimize interference. At the provincial level, officials and private donors have offered a reward, up to $150,000, for credible information leading to the children's discovery. Rewards of this size are intended to encourage people with critical knowledge to step forward, particularly those who might be concerned about getting involved for fear of retaliation or exposure. Investigators and families hope the financial incentive combined with public scrutiny will prompt anyone with relevant footage, messages, or recollections to come forward. Rewards don't guarantee a result, but they can change a person's calculus about whether to speak up, and in some past cases that hesitation was the difference between a cold lead and a solvable case. Throughout, the RCMP have been methodical and, at times, deliberately quiet. Missing person work often requires a long view. Investigators must preserve chain of custody for any physical item, validate digital traces, and prepare legal grounds for searches and subpoenas when needed. That slow, procedural approach frustrates the public urgency for answers, but it preserves the integrity of any eventual case. Authorities have emphasized the ongoing nature of the probe. Evidence is still being reviewed, lab work continues, and police are re-interviewing persons of interest and following new leads as they arrive. The official posture remains open, the file is active, the work continues, and the search for truth does not stop with a recalibration of field resources. It's also important to understand why absence of immediate physical traces complicates the work. Investigators have to account for environmental conditions. Weather can erase footsteps, wildlife can move objects, water levels can shift and hide small evidence, and early volunteer traffic can inadvertently contaminate a scene. The rural terrain that makes this community peaceful also creates gaps in observation. Fewer homes, thicker forest, and longer distances between properties mean fewer independent witnesses and less passive surveillance than in more urban settings. Those are practical obstacles that require investigators to rely heavily on digital traces, such as CCTV, phone records, and dashcam footage, if those records exist and can be accessed. From a human perspective, the case has drawn out a range of emotions and community dynamics. Families of missing children live in a double bind. They must remain publicly engaged to keep attention high, while also preserving privacy and minimizing exposure to harmful speculation. Social media has amplified every rumor and every armchair theory, which sometimes helps by surfacing overlooked content but often hinders by spreading misinformation and creating waves of distraction. Organizers of community vigils and volunteer searches have repeatedly asked the public to protect the integrity of evidence, to preserve original clips, not to re-upload compressed versions that strip metadata, and to report tips directly to police rather than broadcasting them online. Those instructions are not bureaucratic niceties. They preserve the possibility that a piece of footage or a message will be admissible and useful in formal proceedings. 6 months after May 2nd, the central facts remain stark and simple. 2 children are missing. A massive search found no definitive trace. More than 180 tips have been collected and reviewed so far. Family statements contain timing gaps investigators are following. Surveillance footage establishes a last verified sighting the day before. Volunteers continue to search and hold vigils. A significant reward awaits credible information, and the case is still open and treated as suspicious. Those points together frame both the difficulty of the investigation and the reasons why it remains unresolved. What should anyone with knowledge do now? If you have original, unedited footage, preserve the file and deliver it to investigators with the metadata intact. Know precisely when and where you saw something and share that with police rather than posting on social media. If you believe you have information but fear speaking up, consider using anonymous tip lines or a reward mediator so your lead can be evaluated without immediate public exposure. The RCMP have urged anyone with credible information to contact them directly and to work through official channels. That is the most effective way to ensure tips are examined and acted on. Finally, there's a human takeaway that no amount of procedure can fully address. 2 children remain unaccounted for, and their absence reverberates through a family and a community. The investigatory machinery, the drones, the dogs, the warrants, and the lab work is essential. But it must move in concert with community support, careful evidence handling, and sustained public pressure for credible, verifiable leads. The story of Lily and Jack is still being written. Investigators will continue to follow every lawful lead. The community will continue to hold vigils and search where they can. If you know something that could matter, now is not the time to stay silent. We will continue to bring clear, verified updates as investigators confirm each development. For now, hold space for Lily and Jack and demand rigor, patience, and compassion as the work to find them goes on.
Is notable because it framed public perception from the start. When a family's public voice is split,